In this video, I'm going to be explaining how understanding yourself and the unfair advantages that you have can provide the leverage you need to kickstart your side hustle. It doesn't matter if you don't consider yourself a creative person.
I love the colours, I love your presentation, I love your choice of plate, it looks professional.
If you're not financially blessed, or even if you're convinced that there are no unique skill sets that you have. This video is going to explain why your unfair advantage is hiding in plain sight, how to find it, and best of all, what to do with it. The unfair advantage is both the key concept and the title of Ash Ali and Hassan Kuba's best-selling book. But what is it? An unfair advantage is a set of circumstances or experiences that are difficult to replicate, but when understood, they can be exploited to exponentially increase your chances of success. They often involve a weird or seemingly unlinked combination of personality traits, passions, or previous life experiences. I remember the first time that I thought life is unfair.
So unfair!
I was in sixth form with my life plan all figured out, a sports science degree before heading straight in at the top to work with elite athletes. No, that's not the part that's unfair. What is unfair was me being convinced that my sixth form teachers were lying to me.
You are a liar!
As they tried to explain to me that the exact same sports science degree from one university was somehow not viewed as the exact same sports science degree from a more prestigious university when it came to prospective employers. Even though universities aren't all equal, that doesn't make going to one an unfair advantage in of itself. The social networks you might have access to at, say, Cambridge or Oxford may well be an unfair advantage, since this is something that's hard to replicate. But just going to university in of itself is not an unfair advantage. So how do you find your unfair advantage? What if you have no interest in going to university, or you don't have a private school education or wealthy parents that you can fall back on? Here's how. Step number 1 is to find what feels like play to you but work to others. This is a quote from the Almanac of Naval Ravikant, A Guide to Wealth and Happiness. My ADHD brain means once something's piqued my interest, I obsess over the topic. This explains why I've got more than 8 years of notes from conditioning to personal development stored on my phone. In fact, one of my favourite things about actually upgrading my new phone was the fact that my InkPad Note app that I've been using since 2017 was able to be carried over and synced. Naval Ravikant has another term for this unusual combination of passions. He calls this specific knowledge. As Naval explains, if someone can be trained for your role, they will be, and sooner or later, they'll outperform you. Specific knowledge, on the other hand, cannot be trained for, and often involves this weird or seemingly unlinked combination of personality traits, passions, or your particular stance on a given topic. Two of my favourite examples on YouTube include Damo Talks Money.
What's good? Look, I've got this rock solid tip for you, but you've got to jump on it right now. Trust me, it's going off!
Thanks, T.
Who combines financial education with humour, and Ali Abdaal, who was a doctor who went to Cambridge and who now shares his study tips, productivity hacks, and all things content creation via his YouTube channel. You may be thinking that you need a first-class education or perhaps a highly leverageable skill set, such as a knowledge in finance, in order to access your unfair advantage, but that's not true. In fact, step number 1, or step number 2 even, can even be as simple as understanding yourself.
You're always about getting things done. My wife leads with high fiery red. For 27 years, when I'm driving the car and the light turns green, she says, go.
The reason why understanding yourself is key to accessing your unfair advantage is because you need to truly understand what is unique about your specific set of circumstances, passions, or unique experiences. In my case, it was getting a better understanding of how my brain operates. Now,
I know it's easy for your mind to wander. I want you to really concentrate on me.
with over 50 Platform to Perform podcast episodes to my name, I like to think I'm good at talking. Dare I say, too good at talking. Given the number of personal development and business books I've devoured, I was also under the impression that I had a pretty good idea of what makes my brain tick. But it wasn't until I watched a video from ADHD Jesse on toxic productivity for those with ADHD that the penny finally dropped.
Our brain is like shut down completely. It's desperate to get dopamine working, and it knows that that's not going to give us the dopamine. So when we hit that overwhelm point, we're completely shut down, and there's no way we can just push through it to make it happen.
Those closest to me have often remarked how frustrating it is to listen intently to me starting a story.
One time at band camp,
because they know full well they're going to have to endure verbal diarrhea, my 100-mile-an-hour brain, and inevitably they'll have to remind me what conversation took place beforehand so I can remember the point I was trying to make by sharing whatever story it was in the first place. These realizations made me realize that I don't have a neurotypical brain, but if harnessed correctly, my ADHD could potentially be my superpower.
We've been given a gift.
As someone who's in the process of being told officially what I already feel like I know to be true, I've dug deeper and found out that those with ADHD brains have a dopamine response that is somewhat subdued compared to a person who is more neurotypical.
If dopamine levels are too low in particular circuits in the brain, that it leads to unnecessary firing of neurons in the brain that are unrelated to the task that one is trying to do, and that is unrelated to the information that one is trying to focus on.
Dopamine can be thought of as the adrenaline or pleasure hormone that is typically released during fight or flight circumstances. This also might go some way to explaining why those with ADHD may seek out more riskier or potentially dangerous activities. It also might explain why my wife catches me doing stupid things to make the mundane seem more exciting, such as seeing if I can complete an activity before the kettle fills with water or before whatever I've put in the microwave inevitably explodes or bubbles over. ADHD brains like mine have the blessing and the curse of all the intention but sometimes misguided attention. Those with ADHD also create links between things that neurotypical people might miss. When I mentioned about finding what feels like play to you but work to others, something my brain does really well is if I've devoured a specific non-fiction book, I can normally recall exactly the quote that I'm trying to link between one concept and another, or I might remember the story that was used to underline a given concept from one book and be able to recall how another book has shared a similar story. Another example is in my own Patreon content creation is me being able to make the link between, for example, exercise selection for strength and conditioning programs and the concept of assets and liabilities when it comes to financial investments. Now, if I can practice what I've preached in my Building a Second Brain video, I can successfully store and repackage this content, which means that regardless of whether my intended or prospective audience is a boxing one, an athletic development one, or a self-development one, I can still use that same piece of content and either create a link that other people might struggle to initially see, or something that can help me provide an analogy to people who perhaps share my interest in these passions, but perhaps don't understand it on the deeper level that I do. Secondly, when it comes to your specific strength or your specific knowledge, by combining specific different passions which might not seem like they're necessarily related, at least in immediate terms, this can help you niche down and find an audience that perhaps isn't currently being catered for. For example, I've pursued bodyweight training for certain periods in my lifting career where I've learned skills such as a human flag, a ring muscle up, handstand push-ups. I also am a former amateur boxer. Maybe this might lead to me combining passions around how to do calisthenics properly for boxers who perhaps are scared that traditional weight training will slow them down. Perhaps I could do movement training or a resource about why movement training is particularly good for those with ADHD brains. I've already mentioned that I enjoy self-development content and boxing, so perhaps I could create something around self-development resources that would be particularly useful for boxers. The list is endless. I would recommend finding 3 things that you have your interest peaked on and potentially combining serving those niches. At the end of the day, if you're interested in something, it's highly likely that you are not the only person. So if you can combine either those passions or specific personality traits of yours that make it easy to talk to people with those passions, that's a good start. As a former amateur boxer, PE teacher, strength and conditioning coach, there are many prospective rabbit holes that I could turn into profitable side hustle avenues if I thought long and hard about it. Most importantly, given my lived experience of ADHD, if I continue to build a second brain, this can mean that I never have to start a project from scratch again. And rather than suffering from shiny object syndrome,
Harry, no! Don't look at the light! I can't help it. It's so beautiful.
or getting obsessive over a specific topic at any given time, I can somehow capture that information and organize it, and then I can repackage it as and when I need it. Now, the next step is, once you understand yourself, is you then need to be able to set your side hustle up in such a way that it allows you to refine your communication and deliver your side hustle in a way that others would expect. When you understand how your own brain works, rather than relying on habits where you can be easily distracted.
A boat's a boat, but the mystery box could be anything. It could even be a boat!
You can systematize how you produce content for your side hustle, and you can do so in a way that leverages your unfair advantages. On the subject of ADHD, my favorite quote from the Adult ADHD Toolkit is, "My boss always said if he needed something done in 10 minutes, he got it in 5 minutes. But if he needed something from me in 10 days, it took a month." Those with ADHD have a warped perception of time.
Those of us with ADHD tend to have 2 time zones, now and not now.
This might go a long way to explaining why my Casio watch always seems to be on the stopwatch function, even now without realizing I'm obviously timing something. Yet somehow I find myself flicking between being extremely early for something or my heart pumping out of my chest as I'm metaphorically and literally running late. But it wasn't until I turned 30 that I found out why this was. People with ADHD suffer from a lower dopamine response than those who are more neurotypical, whatever that supposedly means. This means that something that would normally trigger a flurry of action from a neurotypical person, such as an important but let's say far away distant deadline, doesn't register in the same way for a person with ADHD. So when I talk about leveraging your unique advantages or leveraging your unfair advantages, this means that if I want to systematize my side hustle, I need 2 things. Firstly, a combination of outsourcing accountability to others. People with ADHD tend to be people pleasers and tend to be more likely to get something done if they're accountable to someone else, yet despite their desire to do something for themselves, may end up failing. This is one of the reasons why, when it came to me competing and training to compete in nationals in powerlifting, I used my Challenge 500 as my hashtag for plotting my journey, and knowing that because I'd made such a big deal out of promoting this on social media, I was even more dedicated and disciplined when it came to my training. Number 2 is to make sure I up the ante on myself by creating shorter than I'd like deadlines that I impose on myself. My iPad timer, or my iPad, which is pretty much just a timer because of how old it is, acts to give me that surge of dopamine for both mundane tasks, but also acts as a bargaining tool to make me realize when I'm diving down rabbit holes and my passion is getting in the way of my productivity. For example, even in scripting this video, I had 1,535 words written, and that was prior to the 2 hours that I've taken to edit this script. Legitimately, I've worked non-stop on this script for 2 hours tonight. I already had the main bulk of the script before this 2 hours, and it's crushed my soul to realize that the actual script is only 100 words longer than the one I started on 2 hours ago. So as someone who leads with Earth Green, more from Scott Schwefel, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and his TED Talk to explain that.
Style. Some of you lead with Earth Green. You're amiable, patient, caring, relaxed. You're brilliant listeners. You listen to see where someone's going to take you without the need to interrupt in a fiery red way.
Give me time to consider my options, but not so much time that I overthink myself.
All right, fire truck. Fire truck, fire truck, fire truck, fire truck. What color are those red fire trucks? Oh, God, I can picture them now, all red and everything.
In future videos, I'm going to be unpicking the science between what makes a good story, how to craft one, and other things that make some YouTube content creators easier to listen to than others. I've already mentioned what makes content forgettable in episode 2 of Show Your Work, so I'll link that somewhere up, down, or below. But if you're still here, like the video, subscribe for the algorithm and potential monotonization further down the line. And if any of the content or context I've provided in today's video has resonated with you, let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for listening. Catch you again in the next video.